When we grew up, a few things have happened on this island, tragic things. They weren't talked about.
I remember being very scared. Like it was a spooky story my dad used to tell me.
It's a fascinating place, but it's a mystery.
You're actually looking up at the place and trying to figure out what happened to these people.
You know, it's more than a story, it's real lives involved in what happened.
It's going to be a showery start to the day across many areas as we see these weather fronts making progress northeastwards. In between the warm front and the cold front, we'll see some drier skies, feeling pleasant actually if you catch any sunshine as the first batch of rain arrives across Shetland and this more heavier pulse and band of rain across Northern Ireland reaches western parts of Scotland, Wales and the West Country through the afternoon. Further west with further showers for Northern Ireland, only around 13 degrees Celsius. And again, the wind will be a feature of the weather.
It was a big shock, and it was the topic at the time. I don't know why, but they were very strict about people visiting. There was no way, we wouldn't get ashore anyway, they said. There was no way we could go.
To really take in how remote and how wild and dangerous this place is, you really need to see it, because it's a rock just coming out of the Atlantic, totally exposed.
Site of a tragedy could be anywhere on that island. There's so many streets. Neighbouring islands, you know, the Seven Hunters, all together, they're untouchable.
It's very difficult to get there. It's not very difficult to go and sail around it. That's okay, and it is amazing. But to actually set foot on it is very difficult.
I've sailed to Flannan's, and not a very nice night, probably a night I shouldn't have been in that bay. And it's not an easy place to land. But it was not a routine thing. It's really a very dramatic, powerful landscape. And that's really the bare bones of the story.
The lighthouse itself was built, I believe, in 1890, and then the disaster happened at December 1900, I believe. There were 3 keepers on the island, which was the normal routine.
James Duckett, the principal keeper, Thomas Marshall, who was the next guy in line, and then the local guy was Donald MacArthur. He was what was called the occasional keeper. He was the local man, the only local man, so his family were in the area.
You know, they were neighbours, that was all. And they used to come out to our houses to play with us.
And they were keeping on the light, making sure that the boats could make it safely home.
And I think, like the way they used to work, one of them would have to be awake a lot, they'd be on like a shift to keep sure the light stayed on.
The routine was everything. What they did was they had a chalkboard where they chalked up like weather observations, and then that was transferred to a log. And another secret rule, which is crucial to the story, is that one person had to remain in the lighthouse all the time. Maybe the other 2 were doing jobs outside, but one had to remain. So that was like non-negotiable.
They had a golden rule that someone would always stay at the lighthouse. You know, it doesn't matter what.
One day, they stop communicating with the outside world and the light goes out.
The light was out for a couple of days before it was reported. Of course, they weren't discovered the night they went missing.
So people, they worry about them and they send a man over to check and see what's going on.
And there's no sign of anyone to greet them. Normally there'd be a bit of a waving and a flag flying and, you know, there's nothing. The relief keeper goes ashore. He finds, the famous scenario.
He goes into the lighthouse and he sees there's been a chair knocked over from the kitchen table and there's food still on the table.
Everything has been cleared away after a meal, very carefully, very tidy. But the chair is overturned. 2 sets of outdoor clothing, wet weather gear, coats are missing, but one is still there. And that's why the timing of the disappearance is pretty solidly established, because you've got the last entry in the written log. So when that was not done, obviously, they're gone. What they find is, at one of the landing stages, there's a box that's broken and there's ropes strewn about. There's railings which are bent. So there's signs that something has happened there, some colossal force has happened there. But that's all. There's no sign of any people.
But how did the 3rd one go missing? That's what is strange.
That I left from this quay here to go out to the Flannans, and they never came back.
It is just so strange the ship coming out and no one there and no sign of anyone, of course, imaginations go. And then, of course, there's the famous narrative poem, Gibson's famous poem on Flannan Isles.
Those three men dwell on Flannan Isle to keep the lamp alight.
As we steered under the lee, we caught no glimmer through the night.
A passing ship at dawn had brought the news.
And quickly we set sail to find what strange thing.
The keepers of the deep sea light.
The winter day broke blue and bright.
With glancing sun and glancing spray.
As o'er the swell our boat made way.
Gallant as a gull in flight.
But as we neared the lonely isle and looked up at the naked height,
And saw the lighthouse towering white.
Of comfort through the dark.
So ghostly in the cold sunlight, it seemed that we were struck.
With wonder, all too dread for words.
And as into the tiny creek.
We saw three queer, black, ugly birds.
Too big by far, in my belief.
For guillemot or shag, like seamen sitting bold upright upon a half-tide reef.
But as we neared, they plunged from sight without a sound or spurt of white.
My uncle was one of the last to come off the lighthouses before it went onto the automatic.
We called him Dodo. And he used to tell me about being out there.
He really did enjoy it. He enjoyed the company. But he says you have to enjoy company and you have to enjoy close quarters. But the Flannan Isles is the only place he ever talked about his work.
The light is revolving and does its flash, and it works on a chain that goes down and then the chain goes back up, and there's a clunk when the chain reaches the bottom of the cycle and climbs up again. And it must have been quite scary, really, for someone just pitch black at night, the wind is roaring outside, and you're on your own, just watching this reflection of a light whizzing around every 10 seconds or whatever the timing of it is, and hearing this clunk of a chain every now and again. And he's saying, what's happening here?
It would be a tough life to have so little communication with the outside world and be stuck just with these two guys. And who knows if they get on. Like, I mean, just having flatmates is bad enough, but they're the only people you see for, I don't know, weeks.
Now, no trace was ever found of the missing three. So, of course, there are many, many theories. Some of them very imaginative. Some of them pretty crazy.
There's lots of theories, and but we will never know for certain what happened to them.
Dodo, our neighbour, anytime I would ask him, what do you think happened to these men? He wouldn't expand on the thing. He would just say, the sea took them. The sea could have taken them, but how did the sea take them?
Could have happened is that with the waves coming in, and the pressure then builds up on the wave and it just blows out like a huge explosion. You know, it must be, I don't know what height it'll be, but it'll be 150 feet maybe above sea level.
I sat there and looked at it and tried to figure out, because he wasn't allowed to leave the lighthouse. That's the rules. But if your two friends don't come back, you sort of go looking for them. You know, like we're humans after all. The only thing I can think of is that one of them was on a safety line or something, repairing the crane. And a wave knocked them off. And then he risked his life going to rescue his friends. He got washed off. And eventually the rope broke. And all three of them are gone. Because it's very difficult to think of why the third person would go.
There were people in the village that I don't know if it's safe to say that they strongly believed there was an argument, there was a fight. Did one of them kill each other and then get rid of all the evidence and they're all gone? You know, there's a development and these things were talked about.
I don't remember the first time I heard the story. I have been told that story so many times throughout my youth. I know that this is a real story of a true thing that happened to real people, and I want to be respectful of that. But the story I was always told as a child was that when they send a man over to check and see what's going on, when he comes into the shore or whatever, he's met with these three massive black birds that sort of fly away as he comes onto the island. Those three birds that he had encountered at the beginning were the three men. They had something had occurred, and that sometimes if you look up and you see three birds flying, that's them.
They never believed any of the stories that were made up about seeing big black birds and things like that. You know, people make a lot of stories like that, which they accepted that it was just an act of God.
For me, what's really important is like trying to imagine the human feeling behind it and the mixture of feelings. You know, whenever you get these mad, taken by alien stories and everything, I think for me it's far more interesting to look at and imagine what is the human side behind the bare bones of historical narrative. I think the story still holds a fascination, and it will probably be endless. And it's because there is no way of being absolutely certain.
You can't get ashore there every day, and some days you're sailing out there and you think this is going to be no problem, and when you get there there's too much swell, it's too dangerous. You know, when you set foot on the Flannans, it's a very strange place, and it feels like if you've suddenly gone 100 years into the past somehow. And lots of people say that they get this feeling that they're back at the time of the lighthouse keepers.
I reckon when you get there, when you're walking up the ramp up towards, and you get the lighthouse and the chapel, the old chapel's just sitting below the light, Yeah, and especially on calm days, you think, wow, it's different.
I got a chance to go out there the first time last year, and I wasn't expecting it to hit me the way it hit me. And it was one of the best things I have ever done.
You get a feeling of just awe that you're walking in footsteps of men that were lost, that no one knows what happened to them.
My generation, we didn't listen enough to them. Carry on the story and carry on that. You know, there's no one there really to tell the story of being out there. The story sort of died with them in a way.
Yeah, I think quite often when you talk about the story, the conversation becomes like what actually happened, and that's almost less interesting to me than the version of the story that I had as a child. Yeah.
The fiction's good. The fiction keeps it interesting. But I think you need the fiction just to keep everything going. You need it.
And I don't think anyone should be very dogmatic in saying, this is what happened to these guys. We don't know. That's where the mystery lies. I think all we're trying to do is just to tell people, this happened, but you make up your own mind. What happened to these men? We'll tell you the story, but go away thinking this is still a mystery.